Backseas Musical Podcast.
Resistance is useless!
Original, overlooked, underappreciated, brilliant, prolific, provocative, and weird. You could pick almost any descriptive language to describe the music of Sparks, and you would probably be right most of the time. For the last 53 years, brothers Ron and Russell Mael have created music that is beyond classification, beyond description, and almost always beyond expectation, and that's the part that makes Sparks so great. Because they're not just making music for the sake of making music. Ron and Russell Mael have spent a career in which their music keeps evolving, progressing, and challenging anybody who's willing to listen. Now, if you ask me to describe Sparks in a single sentence, I'm not sure I could do it. Their music has gone through a multiple number of phases and multiple directions, sometimes even within the same album, and they've got 24 of them in their pocket. Each of them brings something totally unique than anything else they've done before. Their music can be infectious, unapologetic, hilarious, poignant, accessible, inaccessible, and completely relentless. Add that to their unforgettable and sometimes controversial look, and you realize that the Mael brothers are true originals. Whether it's from their traditional rock albums like Kimono My House or Propaganda, or their electronic dance records like Number One in Heaven, to their new wave classics like Angst in My Pants or In Outer Space, or even their more theatrical releases like Little Beethoven or Hello Young Lovers. Sparks fans are rarely disappointed, even when they are at their most perplexed. And that's part of the fun. The latest album from Sparks is called Steady Drip, Drip, Drip. And that album is no exception, holding up to some of their best work, because that is what Sparks is all about. This is my conversation with lead singer Russell Mael from Sparks on Backseas Musical Podcast. The one thing that occurred to me is I don't even have to start off this interview asking you where you and Ron met.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we've heard that one. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure after a career as long as yours has been, and is it like 53 years you guys have been performing as
Well,
Sparks?
It all depends. I mean, it kind of is getting, it's being extended almost daily, the amount of years we've been working. I mean, it depends what you really call the start of Sparks. So it's more like 72 when the first album was with Half Nelson. So it's not even 50 in those terms, but somehow it's sort of been, the mythology is being kind of rewritten daily, that everything that when we first picked up a guitar way back when, that's now being included in the amount of years that Sparks has been together. So,
but the interesting part about it is, when you see other bands that have been around for as long as you guys have been, you never get the sense that if you're going to hear a new Sparks record, that's going to become predictable. Like, the most predictable thing about Sparks is the new album is going to be unpredictable. You never hear that in other bands.
No, well, thanks for saying that, because we feel the same way. We feel the same way that you do, and we just can't understand why that's the case with a lot of other bands, that they don't feel the kind of the urgency and the drive to want to be creating material at this point in their careers, because that's what it's all about. And there's the bands that just rely on touring and can have that luxury where they can rely just on a back catalog, and they don't really need to, in their own minds, need to be coming up with new material and stuff. And we feel just the opposite. We feel that as an artist, your obligation is to constantly be challenging your audience, and fortunately for Sparks and Sparks fans, they like you mentioned, they anticipate that, and they expect that we're going to come up with something hopefully unexpected, or at least fresh and challenging each time there's a new album.
Well, I don't want to name names, but let's just say the Rolling Stones, for example.
Yeah.
When you hear there's a new album coming out, you say, well, okay, I know it's not going to be Exile on Main Street. Maybe I'll go see them because it's the Rolling Stones. But there's nothing in particular that drives you to go see them. It's like you don't have that great new album to be excited about. But when Sparks comes out, and you know that you guys are constantly evolving and changing, that after 24 albums, you're going to find something completely different than not only anybody else would do, but even completely different than anything you guys would do.
No, well, that's exactly what we strive to do each time, and it becomes a bigger and bigger challenge each time that you do that, the longer your career is, because, there's certain kind of conventions and limitations within pop music that you have to be kind of battling against always to try to find new ways to frame what you're doing. And so that becomes the challenge. And for us, that's kind of half the fun of doing what we're doing, is to see how you can stretch the confines of what pop music is, and to still come up with new ways of saying things within 3.5 minute, 4-minute songs.
I think my entry point in Sparks kind of came in two phases. I remember hearing, This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us, but not, realizing the name of the band. I remember hearing the song and saying, wow, that's pretty cool. But then it left my consciousness for a while. And then I'm in college, and I hear Cool Places with you and Jane Wiedlin from the Go-Go's. And then someone reminded me that you guys had also done that song, and I'm like, holy crap! I love that song, and heard it again, and every time I hear that song, it always sounds like I'm hearing it for the very first time. That's one that like hits you right in the face, and you've done that over and over again, like with different songs, whether it's the lyrics or the medley or your voice in particular. There's no one that sings quite like Russell Mael does. Is that by design, or is that because that's the only way you can sing Ron's songs?
Yeah, I mean, the singing style is dictated to a big extent from the way Ron writes his material, and so and then that becomes the style after the fact, sort of, and it's just something that was there from day one with the writing style and the nature of the songs. And so a lot of things happened to be written in kind of higher keys, and we didn't know that there were such things as you could transpose things to different keys and make it more suitable for the human voice. So we left things in the original keys, and that kind of half dictated the way my singing style kind of developed as well. But now it's like something that's become just a part of what Sparks is.
So it's not like Ron's trying to get back at you for anything, or your mom liked you best, or nothing like that?
No. It's wanting to do something that's striking, every time we set out to do something new.
One of the things it's like a running theme, and to me it's kind of comical, is there's a need to classify what you do. And to me, you could take any adjective in the dictionary, and somehow it will have applied to you guys at some point. There's no classification for what you do.
No, and I think that's the strength of what Sparks is whenever you can kind of say exactly what something is, I think that's a big, it's kind of a limitation on what it is. And I mean, a lot of times you read reviews of bands and they say, well, it's a cross between, everything's always a cross between, it's David Bowie meets, whoever. And that just seems kind of, if you can pigeonhole it that easily, then I don't think it's really, it can't be that special. If it's a cross between various pre-existing acts that are out there, then why not just go to the originals of those acts, and it's probably going to be more satisfying. So I think the thing of being kind of unclassifiable is an asset.
It's an asset, and when you look at those comparisons, like you're a cross between this and that, okay, well, where is this and that getting their inspiration? And oftentimes they'll point directly to Sparks and say, we got it from those guys because they got there first.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it when that's when it is being acknowledged, because it's satisfying, especially when other acts cite Sparks' influence on them, and it's really heartwarming for us.
When you see pictures of the two of you together, or if you've seen videos, or if you've seen you guys play live, there's a huge dynamic difference between you and Ron. Ron is much more stoic. The mustache I assume at some points in your life, just the fact that it's a mustache, that's the most controversial thing on the stage. How much pushback did record companies or radio push simply because of Ron's mustache?
Well, I mean, it's, earlier on when he had the more Chaplin-esque mustache, sometimes, people would say, oh, it's Hitler-esque, rather than what the real intent was always. Ron was always a fan of silent movies, and he really liked people like, he liked Chaplin and Buster Keaton, Oliver Hardy, and those people who had, not Buster Keaton, but the others that had, more of that silent film era kind of look, and it was obviously never intended to be anything else, and in fact, it wasn't even intended to be directly silent film style. It was just a style of mustache that was appealing to Ron at times, but then after it became such a thing that became a huge part of the focus of the band, Ron's mustache, he decided to change the shape of it to something more neutral, where it couldn't be it couldn't be confused with any other sort of mustache. So that, because we didn't want that to become the main focus behind the discussion of Sparks.
No, but clearly visually, that's always been something very important, artistically to you guys, whether it's the album cover artwork or whatever. As provocative as it may have seemed to some people, I think without it, Sparks may not have gotten the notice from a lot of your fans, and people may not have noticed Sparks in the same way without that kind of jarring presence of this mustache.
Yeah, well, we've always been just fans of bands early on when we were starting that had, where the image was a really big part of the band, because we always think that all of the things within pop music equally help to make a band be something that's appealing or not appealing, and the music's obviously the first thing that needs to be there. But then beyond that, we think that the bands that are most appealing to us are the ones that have always had a really striking presence, in just their persona and their stage persona. And so I think that that's always been something that we think is just something that's interesting, and it's also just fun for us. And I think fans also appreciate that too, where there's kind of a lot of elements that go into making up what Sparks is.
I've heard, and we've been talking about comparisons. I heard, a couple of comparisons to, Ron's songwriting ability, but more importantly, the lyric writing ability compared to someone like Frank Zappa. And I think that's actually not an inappropriate comparison, because I think between the Sparks and Zappa, there are very few artists at all that like write lyrics with a sense of humor and the poignancy and all the things that Ron clearly pulls into those songs. Even something like off the new album Lawnmower. I don't know if anyone's going to write a song about the lawnmower, but I'll be damned if I was mowing my lawn within an hour and I couldn't get that song out of my head while I mowed my lawn. So
there you go.
It's a real gift to write lyrics of that quality. Tell me about how that works for him.
No, he's very meticulous and cares a lot about the craft of lyric writing, and I think it does show in his lyrics that that pop music lyrics, at their best should be something that's not wallpaper, that isn't something that kind of blends into the background, and that there should be something there that's really striking in one way or another. And I think that, sometimes there's humor in Sparks' lyrics, but I think it's always also countered with a poignancy to the lyrics as well that kind of, counters that maybe initial humor that might be there on some songs, and I think that's the strength of Ron's lyrics are really unique and special, and there's not many lyricists today in pop music that kind of carry on that tradition of wanting to make the lyrics be something special, where a lot of times they're almost like little novellas. and they're telling some little story where you're coming in the middle of the story almost and not knowing what went before it and what went after it. And I think those situations, I really like those a lot, where, it's kind of you as the listener coming in the middle of something, and you're not sure kind of where this all came from, this little tale. And I think in the detail within those, even the song like Lawnmower that you mentioned, there's a lot of detail in there, and but being done in a way almost like a short story, where there's his girlfriend is from Andover, and why Andover, and there's things like that raise questions, but then they don't necessarily get answered either. And I really like that. I think it's really something that's really strong.
One of the songs on the new album, I actually belly laughed when I heard it the first time around, was iPhone, because it's like, how many times have you said the same exact thing in your head? Get off, put your fucking iPhone down and listen to me. I think that is such a hysterical lyric that actually really means something to people. It's like, we're so attached to these devices that we ignore and block off the world.
No, exactly. And I think to be able to say that succinctly within a pop song, to convey that kind of idea. And it was done, too, not just in sort of someone wanting to be kind of a cranky person berating, people but it's sort of being done in a sense too, that it's kind of like speaking to a bigger issue of, kind of people's lack of being able to communicate with each other, and people's attention spans now are kind of off in 20 different directions at once. And so I think to have a song that kind of deals with that sort of topic, and to do it in a really unique way as well, where it's speaking about the iPhone and from various times in history to what if the iPhone had been there during Adam and Eve's period, and the distraction it might have caused, and it speaking about Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address and people not paying attention to him when he's delivering that speech, and then it comes up to even Mrs. Jobs, Steve Jobs from Apple, and her even having problems with her husband because of his distraction and having this device being such a big part of his life. So I think it kind of the way it's done as well is what makes it special.
When you guys are putting together music, I mean, are you and Ron, fleshing out these ideas together, or is Ron presenting them to you and then you interpret it from there?
Yeah, well, a lot of times now, I mean, probably the majority of times is that Ron either has a fully fledged out idea, or at least a title for a song, and then we'll work on it here in my place where we have a studio, or else he'll come here and work and just start working from nothing and start just playing, and I'm recording what he's playing, and then it kind of develops into something. So it's kind of the two ways. Either something's been more fully formed before we start to work on it, or else we just start winging it and see what direction it takes.
I want to talk to you about your singing voice a little bit more. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but at 72, you're 72, is that right?
Something like that.
In the ballpark? Okay. You don't have to get specific. Let's say you're within that decade.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people, and you can hear this, especially in live performance, where someone who's been doing it for a long period of time, their voice does not hold up over the years. Can't hit the higher notes. Sometimes it's the lower register that doesn't make the journey.
Right.
And I know there are some people that just by the physical way they're singing, whether it's diaphragmatically or they're screaming or whatever it may be, causes damage to the vocal cords. But in live performances that I've seen with Sparks, especially going on YouTube and looking at things that are within like the last 3 or 4 years, that has not been an issue for you. Is there something that you're doing different that other vocalists are not doing? Because, I mean, you're hitting notes that people in their 20s could never possibly hit.
No, well, thank you. Yeah, well, I just, again, it's kind of boils down to caring, I think, about what you're doing and not wanting to disappoint people, fans that come to see you live in concert. I mean, the records are one thing, and you can take as much time as you want in the recording to make sure that it sounds really good, but then doing it live is another matter. And I just care and want people to say exactly what you said, and the only way to do that is to keep up your voice in whatever ways it takes. And it gets, it becomes a battle too, because like you mentioned, just voices over time, they tend to deteriorate rather than to improve. But I'm trying my hardest in all sorts of ways to be able to faithfully, sing songs that we did from albums, 40 years ago, and that they'll sound the same way they did, and without having to resort to transposing the keys of the songs, because when you start doing that as well, it brings up other issues, and the songs sometimes tend not to sound the same just by lowering a key of the song. It won't sound the same. And so we try to do things in the original keys as well. So it's just, keeping your fingers crossed and, doing everything within being humanly possible just to kind of sustain that.
Yeah, I've heard it kind of described the way like a professional athlete would continue to keep working out muscles. I think there's something really true to that.
It's absolutely true. I think of it in exactly the same terms. It is like being an athlete, and you have to keep training always and never slip up. And I tend to, right now in this period too, where we're not recording right at the moment anything for a new album. We're working on, there's new material is being written and stuff, but so I'm using that time as well just to be rehearsing like every day as much as I can for the singing for when our next tour is. And so a lot of times it's hard when you kind of, like an athlete might consider it the off season, but it's even athletes in the off season. You have to kind of keep up the training, or things will deteriorate. So I rehearse every day when I can.
I want to kind of put you on the spot here a little bit, because I just did an interview not that long ago with Andy Partridge from XTC, and Andy has had a long-standing problem with Todd Rundgren that goes back to the mid '80s. And I'm not asking you to trash Todd Rundgren, but he said ask Sparks about their experience. What I really want to ask you about is not about whether or not you guys got along with Todd Rundgren, but when it comes to producers, you have a guy who's got a certain amount of success, but then you also work with a Giorgio Moroder who has phenomenal success as well. What's the difference between one producer to the next, and can it really make a substantial difference in the experience of recording a record?
Oh yeah, it makes it can make a huge difference, and each producer brings something different to the table. But just firstly, starting off with Todd, I mean, we have nothing but good things to say about Todd. There's a documentary that's just been shot and nearly finished, done by the director Edgar Wright, and it's a Sparks documentary, the first one that's ever been done. And there's interviews with tons and tons and tons of musicians and actors and writers speaking about Sparks, and one of them that fortunately took part was Todd Rundgren, and we hadn't seen Todd in since '72 when we worked with him, and he was the first person that ever had faith in what we were doing, and so much so to want to give us a record deal and to produce our first album. And so we have if it weren't for Todd, we would Sparks probably wouldn't exist, at least in the form it is now. So and he spoke out really eloquently in the documentary, and it's a really cool thing. And we managed to get, I think, just about all of the producers to speak in the documentary. So it's a really great thing having Todd Rundgren, Muff Winwood, Tony Visconti, Giorgio Moroder all speaking now about the band. And so it's a really great thing. And each one is contributed to Sparks in different ways. Muff Winwood came with a passion and wanting to kind of figure out a way to take what Sparks was doing and to kind of see how he could, without sacrificing any of the artistic ability, to translate it to a bigger audience. And he really pushed us to keep the idiosyncrasies of the band, but also to be, just encouraging in a certain way to keep up what we were doing without sacrificing its uniqueness, and it really worked. And then a producer like Tony Visconti is just an amazing. He's an engineer, a musician, a real taste maker in what he does, and so brings an amazing array of talents to his productions, and Giorgio Moroder has a really unique slant on production and style and in his electronic leanings, and so each one brings something really special to their recordings, and that's why they are who they are.
I mentioned spending a good deal of time on YouTube getting ready for today's interview, and there were two things that actually, now that I think about it, there were three things that I saw that stood out of my mind. One, your cameo appearance in the movie Roller Coaster. I thank goodness that someone cut that down to just your performance, because I couldn't sit through that movie a second time.
No, me neither.
Right, I bet. But there was also a performance on American Bandstand and Saturday Night Live. Now, American Bandstand, I believe, was like a lip sync performance, but it really looked like Dick Clark knew who you guys were and actually seemed very interested in what you were doing, which I thought it's Dick Clark. It's not just. No,
absolutely. And not only we were on, actually, it's either 6 or 7 times. 6 times, I think, we were on American Bandstand. So it wasn't a one-off relationship with Dick Clark. And as unlikely as that might seem, knowing in a certain way what Dick Clark's, his persona is, you would think that would be really unlikely, him liking Sparks, but he genuinely liked the band, and so much so that he had us on. I believe it was probably 6 times that we were on, and even in the documentary that's treated, and it's it is an amazing thing because he didn't discriminate between Stevie Wonder on his show or Donna Summer and then Sparks, and it's all kind of one and the same. And he really even sort of pushed us to have our personalities kind of come out every time we were on that show. And we really give him a lot of credit for doing that, because despite maybe a lack of huge American commercial success, that didn't daunt him from having us on his show just for what we brought to it. And it was kind of bringing in another, something really unique and a different thing stylistically to most of the other bands that he would have on American Bandstand.
It's interesting because, when he would cite, performances that he liked the most, they were always the ones that I think most audiences were either most perplexed by or were the most unique. To have somebody go on there and just, lip sync their song and walk away without bringing very much to the table, I don't think he was interested in that. I think he liked when somebody would even walk away from the microphone and start, throwing things. I think he actually liked that uniqueness.
No, he definitely did, and we would do things on the show that, in keeping with our personalities, and sometimes you think, oh God, well, that's the last time we'll be on American Bandstand, but sure enough, we'd always get the call again. Come on for another time, and it happened that many times throughout our career, which also is pretty unique for a band to be on that many times, and especially when it isn't like Sparks had been at that time like a household name for everybody across America. So it was him really sticking his neck out, and we were always grateful for that.
A while back, you and Ron did a tour, 21 nights. You did 21 different albums, I've seen other bands, they'll do like a full album in their entirety, but they'll do it for their entire tour. So they've practiced it. They're ready to go. How difficult was it to do 21 shows and 21 albums? That sounds really difficult to remember all of that music in one tour.
Yeah, well, it was hugely difficult and took 4 months of rehearsals and for one performance of each of those albums, night after night. And it's something that we're really proud of having done, and don't think there'll be another band who even has 21 albums who would be, as ambitious to want to try something like that, because it's hugely demanding to learn something like, 280 songs, something like that, and to perform them night after night in their entirety. And we did that in London, and we think it's we're really proud of that achievement. We don't know that we would ever do it again, because it's hugely demanding and takes years off your life, but we're proud that we did it.
Was there a particular album that you were looking most forward to doing on stage?
No, all of them, because a lot of them we had never done it, never had been given the treatment kind of for various reasons, and so those were the ones that actually were more interesting to do. Albums like Introducing Sparks that kind of slipped through the cracks, and when you did them live kind of for the first time, you kind of were able to reassess them and to see that, well, the reason that they fell between the cracks maybe wasn't necessarily because of a qualitative thing. It's just also the circumstances and the time surrounding it, and they just weren't given the treatment that maybe they should have been, that should have been given. So those were kind of the albums that were almost more interesting for us to perform in that time.
You mentioned the documentary. Is there any indication about the title and when you expect that to be released?
Yeah, well, we don't know exactly the title yet. Edgar Wright, the director, is still debating over that, but it's nearly done. There's an edit of it now that we just saw a week ago, in fact, and it's at the present state, it's about 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and it's really substantial, I think, for people, both for fans of Sparks and people that are completely, don't know the band. We think it's going to be something really, really special. It's really entertaining on one level, and it's really unique how Edgar's approach to and his passion for the band just kind of shines through in the filmmaking. And so obviously now with the whole Corona situation, no one knows exactly the status of film distribution in the short term, but we're thinking that it'll probably be out, if not by the end of the year, at the beginning of next year. But it's all done and in the can and ready to go. So it's just now all the distributors and everybody to kind of hashing out what when the exact date and how it will be released.
The new album is called Steady Drip Drip Drip. It is remarkable how well it holds up to the rest of the Sparks catalog. It's a fun album. It's an interesting album, and like everything else that Sparks has ever done, it's a challenging one too. And I think you guys have got to be very proud of what you just came up with.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, we are proud of it, and at this point in our careers as well, to be having people come and like you have, and just sort of worldwide, the reaction has been really strong, and we're just really happy that that's the case, because we put a lot of time and energy into doing something that we hope will have some resonance to it, and that's the real satisfaction after we've done it. Not only that we're happy with it, but then when we see it's reaching people as well, then that's the ultimate goal and achievement, and we're really happy about that.
Yeah, I try as hard as I can to research these interviews all the time, and it's very rare when I actually have so much fun doing it, because at every turn there's something totally cool to listen to. It's like, Jesus, this is This stuff is so great, and you know,
thank you.
You can jump in anywhere in the Sparks history and find something really fabulous. So, Russell,
great.
Russell, I appreciate the time today. Thank you so much. Best of luck with the documentary, and the album is terrific.
Thank you very much. Good talking with you.
Good talking to you too. Well, there you go. Russell Mael of Sparks. Listen, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me at bax@rock102.com. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do. And feel free to give us a big, fat, positive review. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we'll see you next time on Baxi's Musical Podcast.